Hey, if you've ever found yourself struggling to hit the sales numbers that you know you're capable of and that you know your agency wants you to hit, you got to stay tuned for this episode. This is our Diary of a New Producer series. For those who have never heard of it or watched it before, it's just a series where we give you inside look behind the curtain into me and Ian's conversations. Ian's a new producer, started 6 months ago. I'm his mentor. My name's Micah, and basically, yeah, give you an inside look into the ups, the downs, what he's struggling with. And like I said, I think this is the most important episode that I will ever record. And I think it's something that impacts not only new producers, but also seasoned producers. So stay tuned and thanks for joining us. All right. So Ian and I met this week. He's been here for 6 months. His numbers aren't awesome. They're not necessarily terrible, but he's kind of hit that point. Just like last week, he was telling me, he's like, man, I just kind of got this sense of like, what WTF, like what's going on, dude. He started to feel overwhelmed, very stressed because I'll just be real with y'all. He's been here 6 months. He's closed really one deal for about 10, 11K in revenue, which isn't terrible, right? Your first 6, 7 months can be a grind. You're trying to plant a lot of seeds, so you're not going to see a lot of fruition. I focus more on activity in the first 6 months, and that's what I really want to get to with this episode. So Ian comes into the office. He works remote most of the time, but he comes in Monday. We're sitting here, we're talking. I said, hey, man, let's look at all your numbers. And I'll take accountability as his mentor. I'm not really his manager, but I'm his mentor. And I never really kind of compiled them all together, looked at them holistically. And so that's what we did. So we sit there, I was like, let's look at your numbers on a weekly basis. You're keeping stats of number of calls made, conversations, meetings set, no's, and people that say follow up later. Side note, if you're not doing that, if you're not keeping your numbers, you need to start doing this. It shouldn't, I'm not saying this from a micromanagement point of view or anything like that. Regardless of if your agency's wanting you to keep numbers or not, or keeping tabs on, you should keep your own numbers. You need to, and this story is going to demonstrate why. So back to the story. So we're meeting in my office, we're going through things, and he starts adding up. We went through 22 weeks, right? His first 22 weeks. And so he adds up all his calls. He's made 2,564 cold calls. Sounds like a lot, right? He's had 205 conversations. He has set 26 meetings. And then he's had 30 people say follow up, hey, follow up later, right? I call that the follow up later list. Now, this sounds maybe okay, right, on the surface, but once you start to dig a little bit deeper, and the question is, well, why do you have one sale, right? So we dig a little bit deeper, and there's a couple things that pop up. One is, out of those 26 meetings, he has a 50% no-show rate. So only 13 actually had a meeting with him, right? And then out of those 13, we're like, okay, what's going on with those 13? Why aren't they moving through the process? Why did you only close one? Well, out of those 13, about 12 said, yeah, I'll get you the information. I need to do due diligence. Let's move forward. And they never got him the stuff. Only 4 did. So his closing ratio is really not that bad, right? He's closed one deal out of really 4 final presentations. That's pretty decent closing ratio. So it really comes down to how do you increase the number of at-bats, right? And that goes back to what I want to talk about now, which is his total calls. It's the base foundation of everything. So once he gave me these numbers, I said, all right, Ian, remember what I told you week 1, what your goal was? I said 40 calls a day, 200 calls a week. And I got those numbers from my own statistics because they're true. And I've seen it happen time and time again, repeat itself. You make that many calls, 1 in 10 or 11 should be a conversation. 1 in 5, 6 should be a meeting, right? That's just how the numbers will bear out. That will help you hit the numbers. So when we look at his numbers that I just gave you, the 2,564 calls, 205 conversations, guess what that comes out to? 1 in 12 conversations. 1 in 12 calls, he's getting a live human on the phone, having a conversation. So pretty close in line. 1 in 8, he set 26 meetings. 1 in 8 of those 205 conversations say yes to meeting. Now I know half canceled, but that's another topic. And then guess what? 1 in 7 said follow up later. So basically, those numbers are pretty in line with my numbers, right? I've been doing this a long time. So I said, you know what? Now let's do this. I told you to be making 40 calls a day, 200 calls a week. Let's go take 200 times 22, the number of weeks that he would have worked here. If he would have done that from week 1, he would have had 4,200 cold calls made instead of 2,500. That's a huge difference, 1,500 more calls. He would have also had taken his same metrics, 350 conversations. That's 145 more conversations he would have had if he actually followed my business plan, my advice. He would have set 43 meetings versus 26. Now, even if half of those canceled, he would have had 21, 22 meetings versus only 13. And he would have had 50 follow-up laters. Now, let's go back to the meeting set. If he would have had 22 meetings and let's say, he's only getting he got one sale, right? But he's selling mid-market insurance. All you need is 6 to 7 sales a year. So every meeting matters and your conversion matters, but you don't need a high volume. So if he doubled his meetings, even if he had 2, or what would that lead to? That's what I asked him. I said, would that be 2 sales more? Maybe another 3 sales, right? We just don't know. And that's what it comes down to. And when he saw these numbers, he's like, oh my God, this is super eye-opening. I didn't realize this. And it's funny, I look back at his weeks of cold calling. Some weeks was 175. He hit 200 2 weeks of the 22. Every other week was, 120, 86, 135, 110, 70, all over the board, 80, 9 one week. There's holidays in there, right? So, but I ultimately had to ask him this, man. I said, hey, dude, you have no clients at this point. 0. What do you do? And I said it in a nice way, but I was like, your only job is to prospect. You need to be making 40 calls a day. And honestly, I would even make more because you have no clients. So you make your 40, and then when you get through your list, be prospecting. Call 50, call 60. When I started over just 2.5 years ago, I was calling 100 some days, right? Because I had nothing else to do. What am I going to do? Sit around and watch the TV, scroll my phone? And so then that led me to asking him this question. I said, well, what's getting in your way of hitting the numbers? He said, man, I don't know. I'll go on my phone and just scroll and whatever. And this gets me to my main point, which is distraction is a powerful thing, right? Everybody in society is grabbing for your time. LinkedIn, YouTube, social media, friends texting you, your family coming in. You need to be extremely strict with setting time to make your calls, and you can't make an exception. Look at yourself as like a factory worker. You have to go to that chip. You have to go on the line every day, punch the clock. You can't just go on your phone, scroll around. You have to get your job done, right? Or you're going to get fired. Same thing as a new producer. You should look at those 40 calls as like, I got to do this. That's the bare minimum, right? Now, I will admit in past videos, I've been kind of lax, and that's on me, right? There was times where he's like, yeah, I made 156 calls. I made 175, and I'm like, oh, that's fine. But when you look at the bigger picture, and it was eye-opening for me too, guys, he's made 2,564 calls. He would have made 4,200. 145 more conversations would have been had over a 22 weeks span. That's, again, I can't stress this enough. When you're selling mid-market insurance, those numbers make a huge difference. And I hate saying it's a numbers game, but it ultimately comes down to you need to get more at bats, you need to get more reps, especially when you're a young producer and you don't have clients grabbing for your time. Now imagine when you start to add clients in the mix. And that's why having these disciplines is even more important. And just from my own perspective, I've been doing this 2.5 years. I started rebuilding my book. I have, 30 clients, about a $500,000 book of business right now. And I'm super intentional. I don't hit my 40 a day, but I'm hitting at least 150, right? A week. I'm hitting like 25 to 30 a day on average because I know that I need to keep planting those seeds. Otherwise, it's going to catch up to me. So like I said in the beginning, this is my most important episode. I gave Ian some encouragement. I didn't just shoot him down. I said, hey, man, your numbers aren't terrible in terms of your prospecting efforts, but at least you got to be hitting the minimum. You're not even doing that and exceeding it. So I hope he feels encouraged. I said, you got to control what you can control, which is your attitude and your actions. It's all you can control. You can't control if people no-show you on a meeting. You can't control if people don't get you the information after they say they will. Those stuff is out of your control. Sure, you can get better at scripting and conversations, but I heard Ian on the phone. He's pretty good. He's solid. I mean, there's not a whole lot of things that he needs to improve on. And so we looked at that. We looked at a first meeting. I sent it on that. I'm like, it's going pretty well. You need to just get a top of funnel bigger. That's all I got for you guys. So, hey, if this is your first time joining us, hope you got some value out of it. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up, help spread the word. We have one simple goal here. It's to help producers sell more insurance, validate whatever their goal is. We want to help you guys accomplish that. So that's all I got for you this week. Thanks again for joining us. Tune in next week. I forgot what week this is, 24, 25, 26. If you've missed past episodes, go check them out. Every single week is something different. Go get them, guys.